So awesome. It sounds like we have a really good group. We have a really great speaker. Just to kind of speak on the market real quick. So those of you guys who just wait until they come here to look at things, you guys can actually look at these stats through rsar.net. So if you don't know about it, they usually have them updated by, I think, about 4 or 5 days into the month. So new listings, so homes getting on the market, we're down from the same time last year by 32% on new listings. Interesting. How many units sold? We're down from the same time, and this is in October, obviously, by almost 35% on how many items are sold. My opinion is a lot of people just dealing with a lot of buyers. They're waiting to find out what was going to happen during the elections. So I have a lot of buyers reaching out to me again. So if you guys are having trouble selling some of your flips or what have you, the buyers are back out there in November, oddly. New contracts down 40% from the same time last year. So we're seeing some obvious changes in the market. Days to contract, and this is Reno and Sparks, just so you guys know. So when you're seeing this, up 300%. So, which is still pretty, I mean, relative to, you're looking at 36 days compared to we're at 9 days, same time last year. So all these are really good indicators that the market's slowing down. Median sold price. You guys want to look at that? That hasn't changed.
What's the median sold price?
540.
540.
Yeah. And that's for Reno Sparks combined. It's higher for Reno, a little bit lower for Sparks. People are still getting what they're asking. But we're seeing a lot of people putting in ask price, but then they're asking for seller credit. So that number, I think, is a little bit, would be skewed if we actually factored that in. And then active inventory up 103% from same time last year. So a lot of really significant changes in October. I just wanted to make sure and go through those this time and share them with you. Nothing to be scared about. It's just, we're in a shifting market. So if you have any inventory that you need to get rid of, I definitely reach out. We have 3.4 months supply of inventory. We're in a balanced market. So when the month supply of inventory gets to 6 months, that's when we're starting to head to a buyer's market. So right now we're kind of in a balanced market. And that's Reno Sparks combined. Different areas, micro areas, you're going to see less or more. So just kind of keep that in mind. Some areas we're still in a strong buyer's market, seller's market, excuse me. And some of them were actually in a buyer's market. So anyway, does anyone have any questions about any of that or comments or? Okay, then we're going to kind of head on over to you if you don't mind. So we have Jacob Hansen with us, and we met at a BNI.
Yep.
Business networking group, if anyone doesn't know what that is. Jacob is the co-founder of Rental Advisor, a vacation rental management firm with over a decade in the short-term rental industry. He has been in the thick of all aspects of this industry as it has exploded with the rise of AirBnB. Jacob is a graduate of BYU Hawaii with a degree in supply chain and operations management and a black belt in Lean Six methodology. They have expanded from a college startup to a full service management firm with over 30 employees. Rental Advisor manages or partners with over 500 units in the market over the United States and generated nearly 15 million in annual revenue during 2021. Most importantly to Jacob, he is a married father of 4 and proud coach of his son's undefeated Pop Warner football team.
We were undefeated as of the time of that writing. Unfortunately, we lost in the playoffs, the semifinals. But yeah, I was coaching the 8U, the 8-year-old and under minors team here in Reno. So we had a very good season, had a great team. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, well, let me get right into this. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So rental advisor. This is the business that myself and my business partner started. We got started back in about 2010, 2009-ish. He kind of got it started a little earlier and then I got involved. But real quick about me, this is my life. This is why I do what I do. I have a beautiful wife and 4 children, and they're kind of the center of everything for me. So I just wanted you guys to know that. So a little bit about my story. So you can see how I got into this game and know where I'm coming from and why I'm someone that maybe is worth listening to, hopefully. So back in 2008, my business partner, Devin Monker, and he had graduated school just a couple of years before that from the same college as me. And he got into real estate investing in the year 2007. So you can imagine what happened. It didn't go well. And he got his butt kicked, and he ended up kind of through circumstances coming into managing a couple of vacation rentals on Oahu. And then he realized that it was pretty lucrative and was working pretty well, so he wanted to expand. So not too long after that, I got involved. I had just graduated. My wife still had another semester of school, so we were I was looking basically just for work. And then he hired me to help him to find inventory. Eventually we hit it off, we became friends. And he said, look, if you stick around long-term with this, I'll offer you a partnership in the business. And so I got involved in it and been doing that now for over a decade. So we grew, we started growing. These are some of the units that we brought on. This particular property is our flagship home. It's a $10 million mansion on the beach in the North Shore of Oahu with an infinity pool, and Diana Ross stayed there, Florida Georgia line. I got to meet Howie Long. That was kind of cool. I'm a football fan, so that was cool. So we've grown, we've expanded, and we manage all of these different units. We especially like to focus on the higher end units because that generally tends to be where we do best. We grew our team. We now have about 30 people who work for us. And then in addition, we work with all sorts of different cleaners and other vendors that work with our company. So you guys are here to learn about the short-term rental industry. Well, I have been here in this industry since before Airbnb was a thing. When I first got on Airbnb, they had a different logo and they only were doing couch surfing and they were terrible. We didn't get any bookings. They were kind of a joke website. And so, go ahead. And the way that we did the listings, the way that guests inquired about the properties, all the aspects of running the home were very, very different. And it's important to remember because I want to talk to you guys about what it's about now, because it's very different than it was back in the day. So our industry has been exploding. Okay. You know, if you heard anything about Airbnb, it's these graphs that from 2000, and I was back here when it wasn't around, and then it shot up and has had all sorts of revenue. And then the pandemic hit. And believe me, in my industry, in April of 2020, I lost about 10 pounds due to stress because I had a lot of reservations. We do about 10,000 reservations a year. And I had a lot of reservations that we were holding and they were canceling left and right. And we were going, holy crap, what's going to happen? Now, luckily though, what happened in this graph is exactly what happened to us. At first, it was really, really scary. Everyone was canceling it. But then everyone canceled their international travel and everyone decided that they were going to all start traveling domestically. And 2020 was a great year for us. 2021 was the best year we've ever had. Okay. Now, right now with the economy being a little shaky, it's leveled off a little bit. And I think we're getting back more into normal patterns. But one of the things that happened as you look at this, you have growth every single year except for 2020. And these are the revenue figures. So even though less nights were booked, the nights that were booked at a higher rate. Okay. So what this says is that the travel industry has changed. Now, this is what I was going to talk about with this is an important thing to notice. Notice before the pandemic that the winner was the hotel industry, but then it flipped. Anyone have an idea why that might have happened? Why would the pandemic suddenly drive people more towards Airbnbs?
Less contact with people.
Less contact with people. Also, a lot more people were working from home. we started getting all sorts of people inquiring and booking, because guess what? If I'm gonna work from home,
That's what I'm saying. In a nice place.
why not go stay up in the mountains in a cabin or wherever? Yeah, exactly. And so as people are being exposed more and more to, rather than hotel, Airbnbs. My generation, okay, we don't stay in hotels. We all get on our phone, we go to Airbnb, we look up properties and we book them. Okay, so the reality is the times are changing. Okay, the travel industry is changing and the hotel industry is scared to death. That's why they're putting the properties on the Airbnb website, because they know that's where the traffic is going. In fact, Marriott has reached out to our company to work with us and other companies, not just us, but to get high-end properties listed with them, because they recognize that the travel industry has changed. So something to keep in mind. So this is creating a lot of opportunities in the market, and opportunities in kind of weird places sometimes. There's something wrong here, Ginger?
No.
Change that, just don't want to mess them up. It's created a lot of opportunities in the marketplace, but you gotta not just go in blind, not knowing anything. And that's one of the ways that we try and help people so that they don't go into this market blind, because there are opportunities, but there's also a lot of false opportunities out there. Okay, and there's a lot of pitfalls and dangers, like he was saying, some of the regulatory changes that are out there. Something you have to be aware of. Okay. So let's talk for a minute.
Oh, touch the screen.
Touch it?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about some of these opportunities. Okay, from a real estate investment standpoint, this property might blow your mind. Because this property was, this is actually one of the first units that we got involved with, or that I got involved with in Hawaii. One of the first deals I did from beginning to end. What happened was that the property owner had acquired a property through inheritance in his family. And it was kind of a rundown 5-bedroom property in Kaneohe, Hawaii. Okay. And it was, but this guy had some money, and he came to us and he asked me the golden question. I, at that time, was working every day with our bookings team. And so I was looking every day at what the guests were asking for. He came up to me and said, "What are guests asking for?" And I was like, "I'll tell you what the guests are asking for. They're asking for pools, they're asking for hot tubs, and they want nice accommodations, right? Especially in Hawaii, there's a thing where people think, oh, we don't need a pool. It's like, no, people who go to Hawaii, you'd be amazed how many people want to lay by the pool in Hawaii." So he said, "I'll do it." And he had the budget to do it. He went and, now this property, when he had it, this is obviously back in like 2010, 11, was worth about $500,000. He sunk about $1 million into the remodel of this house. He turned a house that was kind of a mediocre home into a luxury property. But this is his calendar in the last 6 months. His rate is about anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 per night. That was his take-home revenue in the last 12 months.
Have you had any trouble with the crackdown on short-term rentals in Hawaii?
Yes, I mean, believe me, there's a whole lot going on with that.
I know they basically shut them down.
Yes.
On Oahu specifically.
So, and we can talk about that. In fact, actually, let me address that right now specifically, because that is, Oahu just passed. So Oahu is not, well, this is actually a good instructional tale for everybody. Okay. So Oahu stopped issuing permits in what year? Guess what year it was when they stopped issuing permits? 1987. The year after I was born. Sorry, I don't want to expose my age there. Yeah, so they haven't issued a vacation rental permit. How many vacation rentals are there on the island of Oahu right now? It's like 12,000. None of them have a permit. Well, there's like 800. Okay, so wait a minute. There are all these people who are unpermitted. They've been operating all of this time. The way that they did it, and the way a lot of municipalities do this, and because we're not just in Hawaii, we're in all sorts of different markets, is, and actually, I think this is a good way of doing it. They didn't issue the permits, but what they would do is that it was sort of like they wouldn't proactively enforce the law. So if your property wasn't bugging people and wasn't causing a problem, then they'd leave you alone and you could operate. But if your property was having problems and partying or, and you know, then they would shut it down. And so most of our properties, they've never had any problems because most of them aren't in like tight residential neighborhoods. They're properties that are suited to what it is. You know, they're on the end of some street near the beach or something like that. And so they don't tend to cause problems. However, the hotel industry, who do you think owns the politicians in Hawaii?
Right.
The hotel industry owns the politicians in Hawaii. And so they have been lobbying hard to try and stop allowing people to do vacation rentals on Oahu. They recently passed some regulations that they're trying to now enforce. Now, they passed regulations in 2019, and they were going to come after the rentals. And we were like, oh boy, here we go. Nothing happened. People are operating as normal. They've now done this again, but this time they're a little more serious about it. So we actually pulled down all of our listings and there's a legal fight going on. But what has happened each time is that to actually enforce some of these laws is very, very difficult. Okay, because there's a whole, I could give a whole presentation just on the difficulties of enforcing it, but enforcing some of these laws when you have the big thing is you want to make sure that you have a home that is appealing to the guests. He asked the perfect question. What are the guests asking for? And then he gave it to them and he was rewarded. So, but don't just think this can just happen in Hawaii. There's a couple of units that we have here in Reno. These 2 units were originally being rented to college students. If anyone knows something about college students who are renting your units,
Don't do it.
they get a little rough on those units. Now, here's another thing about vacation rental investing. I always say you're either paying on the front end or you're paying on the back end. What I mean by that is with vacation rentals, you have to furnish the unit. It requires additional investment. But the difference is a year from now, 2 years from now, that property has been cleaned and inspected 3 to 5 times a month by professional cleaners. Any of you guys, I've owned long-term rentals as well. And I know that when I go into my property after a year, I walk in and I look at the carpet and I look at what I'm like, oh boy, before we rent this again, I gotta redo the carpet, I gotta fix this and that, and then you pay it on the back end. So I always tell people, you're either gonna pay it in the front, you're gonna pay it in the back, but one way or another. But the wear on the asset, if you're living in a property that you're renting for a long time, you start to feel like, well, this is my place. And then they treat it like it's their place and they have much lower standards. If you're staying somewhere for 4 nights, you feel I'm a guest in someone else's home. And a lot of times these tenants have more money, probably a lot of them are property owners themselves, and they do that. How many of you guys, out of curiosity, how many of you guys have stayed in an Airbnb in the last year or 2? Okay? Exactly, yeah. Okay, so everybody's staying in Airbnbs, everybody's staying in this. It's just the way the travel world is now. And the tenant quality. How many of you guys are homeowners? Exactly. So we have homeowners that are going and staying there instead of people that oftentimes aren't homeowners because they're not responsible individuals. And that's just the way it is sometimes. Okay. So these properties in Reno are making about $11,000 a month between the 2 of them. Okay. Before this, the property owner was probably making somewhere between the 2 of them in the range of $6,000 to $8,000 a month. Okay. So a significant increase and none of the headache. And they told me we're never going back to college students. And they're very, very happy with the investment they made and the change that they made. Now, these properties are in a good location and the owners were willing to do what's necessary to make these successful. So long-term versus short-term revenue in the Reno area, what are we seeing when we're looking at this? So there are, one of the things that we do is there are services out there that we've been able to get involved with that have back-end data from Airbnb and other sites that they basically package and sell that data so that you can see what's going on in particular markets. Okay. And one of the things that we do is that we will work with people that are purchasing properties to try and help them understand, hey, how much would this property, how much do you think this property will make as a vacation rental? We then do a full analysis breaking down every single month, what we think the high and low estimate would be for each month of the year, which is going to be very different in Reno in April versus Reno in July. You just get very, much higher. But these are the numbers that you're looking at. So 12 to 20 nights a month is generally where 80 to 90% of the properties are going to fall. As far as their occupancy rates, obviously slower seasons. Let's say it's a slow season, you're a brand new property, you have no reviews yet, anything like that, you're gonna be on the lower end of this scale. Once you start to build those reviews, you begin to gain more authority within the search algorithms, you begin to increase over time. That's another thing that we always want to warn everyone. In the vacation rental space, don't expect it to, it can sometimes take off and go really well right from the start, but it takes a little bit of time to build that momentum. Things like reviews are incredibly important. They play into your search rankings. Also, just people that are return guests begin to, they stayed there before, they start to stay there again. They'll tell their friends about it. It just takes time to get up and running. So as you get up and running, then you're starting to see these higher things also with the seasonality. So if you're a property that has a bunch of reviews and you are in the high season, and you've been doing this for a while now and you've gained that authority, yeah, you should be expecting 20+ nights on some of those units. So the vacation rental game is much more, it has the ups and downs with the seasonality, but generally speaking, if you pick a reasonable property in a reasonable location, you will actually do better in the long term financially. It just takes a little bit to get going and you ride a little bit more ups and downs. So if you're looking for things just to be steady and smooth and you can't afford some ups and downs, then this space might be a little tricky. But if you have the patience to let it kind of build its momentum, then it turns out and runs real well. Okay.
And there's no permits required in Reno, right?
Reno, no. Washoe County does.
Right.
It's a fairly easy process. I did it with my own homes when we were away for.
But only an incline, right?
No, even anywhere in the county, you're supposed to.
Because I went through that, and when I went to turn it in, they told me you don't need to do this. That was only for the unincorporated of incline. Yeah.
Told me that I had to. Well, that's fine. Well, they took mine, they sent out the inspector, but with that in mind, I mean, if they don't, great, wonderful. But with that said, I know that in incline, there is a different set of permit requirements. It's much more stringent than it was for me. So I don't know if that maybe has changed, but that was what I'd heard.
Is that because of the hotel up there? The Hyatt is up in them.
Yes, the Hyatt. I'm not 100% sure why.
Heard it was because of all the issues.
And what they say it's for and what it's actually for is always a question. I do think that, here's the other funny thing. I'm not against some level of regulation of vacation rentals. Like, I'm not. I think that it should be sensible regulations where if a property isn't causing problems, why are we shutting it down? Right? So that's kind of my personal opinion on some of that. But I also do understand the idea of if you have someone who lives right next door to you and they start doing an Airbnb and there are people partying and being crazy, it's like that obviously there needs to be some recourse. So, all right. I already talked about this. Long-term versus short-term as far as the revenue, but then you have the cost side of it. You're either paying up front or you pay out the back end. But cost-wise, I don't think that there's a major significant difference in the two. So long-term versus short-term, generally, if I were to sum it up, I think in general, if you can ride those waves, have a little patience as it gets going, you're going to get better revenue, you're going to get less wear and tear, you're going to have better tenants, professional cleaning and inspections. And this is the little part, though, that the use of the property, a lot of investors, and I get this, I don't really care about the use of the property, but I'll tell you what, if you have a thing that's making you money as an investment, but also as a place that you just love to go, like, that's pretty awesome. So that's another aspect to it, that you don't just have a pure financial investment. Even though you have a great financial investment, you have the added bonus of like, now I get to go and stay in my happy place and enjoy myself up at Tahoe or I don't know, Big Bear or wherever you like to go, Hawaii or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's three parts in the vacation rental game. Oh, there it is. Came up like that. There's three parts to vacation rental handling. Okay, the whole management of the game. The first is what we say the product. Okay, when we're working with our owners, we say the owner provides the product. That's the owner's job. It's your property. We will advise you on how to put together a product that will be marketable. But at the end of the day, you got to make your product something that we can sell, because that's the next part. You got to sell it. Okay. Now, In talking about selling your vacation rental, and getting it out there and marketing, okay? You have the big listing sites, right? What are they? Anybody know?
Like Airbnb.
Airbnb is the biggest.
VRBO.
Verbo, yes, it's really Verbo, it's like, I was originally it was VRBO. And people, I can always tell how long someone's been involved with this market or how long they've been aware of it, whether they call it Verbo or VRBO, because they're trying to get us all to say Verbo. And I started thinking about it. But yes, Airbnb and Verbo, they probably honestly hold about 90 to 90% of the travel market in this space. Meaning 90 to 95% of people, if they want to get a vacation rental, where are they going to go? How many of you used, all of us rose our hands about the properties that or that we had stayed in Airbnbs. How many of you guys booked the property on a site other than Airbnb and Verbo? One. And that's probably where the stat would be. I say 90 to 95% of people book on those two platforms. Okay. This is how the game has changed a lot. 2009, there was a site called vacationrentals.com. There was FlipKey. There was Vacation Home Rentals. There was
HomeAway?
Vacation Roost. There
HomeAway was
was,
one.
what was that?
HomeAway.
HomeAway. HomeAway eventually bought vacationrentals.com and Verbo. But then they were like, HomeAway doesn't have the brand recognition that Verbo does, so they rebranded as Verbo.
Vacasa.
Vacasa. Vacasa is actually a full service management company. They're not just a listing company. They're actually one of our competitors. Just so you guys all know, with Vacasa, just FYI, in the vacation rental space, actually, I'm going to get to them later because I have a slide on them. So I'll wait.
Teaser.
So there are all these different sites. And the way these sites originally worked was that you would go into Verbo. It was interesting, when you listed your property on Verbo, you either listed at a gold level or at a silver level or at a bronze level. And that determined where you ranked in the search rankings. And you paid an annual fee. And then when your listing was up, a person sent a message through your listing. It came to you in your email, and then you just began an email correspondence. All the site was literally was just a way to say, hey, I have a property, and it put you guys in touch with each other. That was it. That was the whole site. That is not the way it works anymore. Okay. First of all, and when we originally were training on our team, our big thing is like kind of like salesmanship. Like you're in talking with the guest, you want to make sure you kind of sell them on all the features of the property and why they're going to love it and all that kind of stuff. It's about speed to lead, because you had to, those inquiries came in. If they were inquiring on 10 different properties, you had to get to them quick, close them. Well, kissing them. Instant book. All of these sites, Airbnb, Verbo, and all the big guys, it's all about instant booking, which means you don't even talk to the guest before they book. So the game is now listing optimization. You got to think of Verbo and Airbnb not as listing sites, but as vacation rental search engines. Do you know what the factors are that determine how high you rank? It's important to know in this industry. And that's what my team obsesses with. It's what they're trained on, and they're always trying to stay on top of the latest trends within Verbo and Airbnb and anything they're changing to make sure that our listings can rank as well and pop as much as you can. One of the biggest factors in that is bounce rate. Anybody know what bounce rate is? Bounce rate is how often someone comes to your listing, looks at it, and then moves on to another one and doesn't book. Okay. Now, why does that matter? So here's a rookie mistake. I've had owners say, hey, I got a great idea. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to list the property at $200 a night, but that's only for the first 4 guests. For the next 4 guests, it's $50 extra a night. So they're thinking, they're going to be this low price when everyone's going to go there. You're right. But then they're going to bounce. And so what's going to happen is your bounce rate, even though you're getting more eyeballs to your property, your bounce rate is higher. Verbo is punishing you. Airbnb is punishing you. Now, I actually think it's a smart strategy to have an extra fee for the last guest maybe or 2, guest 7 and 8, rather than guest 5, 6, 7, and 8. That can be a good pricing strategy, right? But not to try and do that because it will mess with your bounce rate. And those sites make money now, not based on a subscription that you pay, but they take a piece of each reservation that's made, right? So their whole incentive structure is to get people to book. They're gonna show the homes that people are most likely to hit that book button and not keep searching. So that is the number one factor that will determine your search rankings. Other things play into it, pixel counts, you have to, things like the number of pictures that you have, the number of reviews that you have, there's a whole list of things that can mess it up. Also, even just the experience of the person on the listing itself. So here's another little tip. People write these big, long novels of grandeur about their property and how wonderful it is. Dumb idea. No one sits there and reads the whole novel. You give a quick paragraph, and then what you do is you do bullet points of the key features of the things people like best, like all the things, like what are the exact sleeping arrangements, all that kind of stuff. Give people the information that they need to make the decision of is it the right home for me. Another big factor, remember, they're not booking a property. They're booking pictures of a property. None of these people have been to your home. I can't tell you how often I've had this conversation with owners, like, yes, I go to your home and it just blows my mind. But then you have these pictures that do not do it justice. You have to capture the home and really the essence of it and don't skimp on the pictures. Because that's the number one thing. People generally look at three things when you look at the listing. You look at the picture, you look at the price, and you look at the reviews. If it's got a good price, good pictures, and good reviews, you're 90% to making your decision. Then it's just a question of, does it have the little things that you want for your stay? For me, I have 4 kids, so I'm looking, does it have that high chair? Does it have the pack and play? That leads me to another thing. The amenities that you put in your house. Short-term rental. If I'm gonna live in a house for the rest of my life, I probably care a lot about the countertops. Do I care a lot about the countertops if I'm gonna be there for 4 days? Not that much. You know what matters more to me? Does it have a high chair? Does it have the porta crib? Does it have the things that I don't have to bring with me to the house? Is that a pool table? Is that a ping pong table? Does it have, so you have to think different about what you want to invest in. People will look at 2 or 3 or 4 different properties when they're making their decision. Okay, they're all big enough to sleep their group. But the thing that makes the difference is the one that has those little things, right? And so one of the things we do when we help people get their units set up is that we have a comprehensive vacation rental setup guide. And it goes through, okay, what's your typical bedroom have? What does your typical bathroom have? What's all the stuff you need to have in your kitchen? Da, 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 da. But then it also has a list of what we call the kind of the optional amenities. And those are the amenities, we basically ask the question, what are our guests asking for? And so we made a big fat list of the things that we hear all the time. And so those are the little things that set you apart. This industry, one thing about it that is happening, I've noticed it big time, it's getting way more competitive, right? It's a competitive space, but if you're willing to play the game aggressively, you'll win. If you don't, it's going to be harder to play in the industry. All right, so we've talked about the product itself, the house, the amenities, that kind of stuff. The sales technique, obviously the listing sites, you can do other stuff. Social media stuff can be helpful. It can generate stuff. Another thing is, besides the listing sites, another thing is your own property's brand loyalty. So have a name for your house. Ginger, what's yours called?
Plumas Cottage.
The Plumas Cottage. So that way people are like, I didn't book an Airbnb, I booked the Plumas Cottage. And you guys should check it out. It's a great place. You know what I mean? And it sticks in their mind more, and then you get the return guests. You want to have a repeating guest strategy, right? You want to think about that, because people, if they had a great time, they will tell their friends, and then next time, instead of going to Verbo, they'll go direct to the property or to the property manager who's has that property. Okay, so Ginger, what time are we? Do we wrap up? 7:30.
Sorry, not
what was that?
Sorry,
Is 7 or 7:30?
I don't know.
Sure.
Okay,
What
I
time
think
is
I
it
think it was 7:30.
That's wrong, so I
Okay.
got screwed up, sorry,
No,
like
like-
7:30, is it?
It's not pretty certain.
No, it's
Okay,
7,
yeah.
sorry.
The other part, cleaning. Okay, now anyone who knows this industry knows. This is where the hard part is, okay? Cleaning and caretaking of a property is challenging primarily because finding good help can be difficult. My recommendation, don't skimp on your cleaner. Compensate them well if they're good and hold on to them. Because if you have a good cleaner that makes your house look good, it makes a big difference. They're the number one factor on if people complain or not, is if your unit is clean and nice and maintained to a good standard. Okay, so you want to make sure you have the processes in place to make sure that you keep good people. Finding good people, I wish I had a magic bullet on how to do that. Go ahead.
What's your experience in inserting guests to the cleaning before they leave?
Not good. The thing is that it has to be to a certain standard. Now, here's a challenge that we have in our industry just in general, okay? And it's one of the big, in fact, I was talking to a guy who used to work for Vacasa. Is one of the challenges of it is to inspect after, is the quality control behind the cleaners, right? The cleaner cleans, but if the cleaners gotta rush off to their kid's soccer game or whatever, and they cut some corners, then it doesn't get done right. But if you don't have someone coming in after to do the quality control that isn't the cleaner themselves, you have some issues. Now, the problem is that having someone separate from the cleaner to do the inspection, this financially all becomes a little bit much, and it can be a little bit challenging. One of the advantages if you have a lot of properties is that it's easier to control that because you can have one person who's just inspecting units and it's still financially viable, where a single unit can be more challenging. But another way that you can do it that doesn't necessarily cost as much, but still is effective, is surprise inspections. You just let your cleaners know that we do surprise inspections every so often. That way they know that it's like, I'm still accountable to what's going on with the property. Okay, so other things when it comes to the cleaning and caretaking side, have a checklist of things that they fill out each time. Do not just be like, oh, clean the unit, right? Because what it is it's the little details that are missed. Also, I would highly recommend that if you make these checklists, the best way to make the checklists is not to have everything on the checklist. The only things you have on the checklist are the most commonly missed things, right? You don't need to remind them to make the bed in the master bedroom. Like, they're gonna remember that, okay? So other thing with it, always have 2 sets of sheets for each bed and basically 2 of everything. That way, when they go in, if you have a back-to-back turnaround, you then can go in, instead of having to actually do the laundry and then put it back on the bed, you just rip the laundry out, put the fresh stuff on, you can take it off site, they can do the laundry, and the next time they just do the same thing. Okay? Little tips. There's a million things I can say about it. Anyway, so we talked about providing the product, we talked about selling the product, and we talked about maintaining the product. All right, common mistakes that we see people make in this industry. Number 1, the wrong property. Okay. I've had people who said, you know, hey, I got this unit. It's out in the back instead. We're gonna do an Airbnb with it. I'm like, I don't think that's the best stuff. You know, that's probably, so when they ask me to give the revenue figures, I give them very realistic revenue figures, and then they don't call me back. Which is fine, because here's the other thing about this industry. I will say there are people that will blow sunshine up your butt, tell you how much they're going to make, but I'll tell you right now, you do not want to tell people that they're going to make $1 billion and then be in a long-term relationship with someone who's pissed at you because you didn't deliver. I give people realistic numbers because I got to hit those friggin' numbers. I got to work like crazy to make sure that what I'm telling them is right based on what the market's telling me. Okay, so
So it's a good area around here.
in Reno, anything close to the event centers. So downtown, the university, the convention center, the main draw in the city of Reno is the events. And here's what's wild. I didn't know how many freaking weird events we have here, right? Like
All of them.
it's there's all sorts of weird stuff, and you find out people are coming for like, here my whole life. I didn't know that. Which, by the way, I am a Reno local. I grew up here my whole life. My family's been here since the 1920s, so we're over 100 years. But so as far as what is the right property in Reno, I can tell you in certain markets, you're gonna need to find someone who understands the industry within that market, right? Here's another really interesting thing, okay? I would put Reno in the middle of the road as far as opportunity markets. 5 years ago, I would have put it as hot and a way underserved market. My mom, interestingly enough, she came to me and she was thinking, she's involved in the legislature and she's in Carson when they're in session. And so she decided, she was like, well, what if I had a property down there and then I did like an Airbnb and then I stayed in it when we were in session and stuff like that. And I was she asked me like, what do you think you do? Well, the thing is I went down there and looked, there's very, very little there, you know? And so it's like, when there's very little there, it's kind of like, you either roll the dice and you're the one guy servicing a market where there's a difference in supply and demand, or there's nobody there because there's no demand. Well, for her, it went great, actually. And this was several years ago, so things have changed since then to some extent. But there are these markets. Remember, if a town has a Motel 6 in it, that means that Motel 6 is staying in business. Okay? And the travel market has simply changed. People now who would have gone to a Motel 6 now are going to the Airbnb app. So there are these weird little markets where some of these opportunities are popping up. I will say if Reno is a medium market, the hottest markets right now are generally in the South. Nashville is probably my favorite, St. Augustine, Florida, the Florida Keys, anything near like Gatlinburg.
What about the hurricane?
What was that?
What insurance is for?
The hurricanes? So the thing is I mean, you do have to take that into consideration, obviously. But the demand, I'm talking more from the demand side of it. And get good hurricane insurance. I don't know how they do it down there. So this is one thing too, is that there's two aspects of it. Like when it comes to the compliance side, I'm fairly familiar with it, but compliance, we leave to the owners to figure out what they want to do with the city. Because here's the other thing. Some owners are like, I'm just going to go without a permit. Because I know that they don't enforce the law around this area. Right? And so like, I'm not in charge of enforcement. So we just kind of like stay out of that. It's like, all right, that's for you guys. But that said, I do have people that we work with. In fact, I'm meeting with one of them tomorrow, who specifically, they have a business that keeps your rental compliant and are experts on all that and ways to work with it and everything. So anyway, that's a different story. But yes, I would say hot markets are generally places that have a fair tourism level. Is what you want to look for. Fair tourism level doesn't have, if it's super high tourism level, like San Diego, bro, that market's saturated. They've been doing vacation rentals there since before any of us were born. So that kind of market is too hot. So it's generally saturated. Well, I don't even know if it's saturated, but it is what it is there. The opportunity isn't as hot. Where you can, and the real estate prices in those places, you know, New York, San Francisco, like it's super expensive. On the other hand, somewhere like a Nashville, Tennessee is a pretty good draw for tourism, events, things like that. But its real estate prices are still reasonable. See what I'm saying? So if you have, some people want to keep their investments more close to home, Reno has a great market for that, but there are other markets that are really good. And again, I know all the evidence. Wrong max guest count. Here's a little trick. We did a study on our guests. We looked at all of our data because we wanted to know this question. When people go to the search engine, right? They put in, what do they put in? What did you put into the search engine?
Number of bedrooms.
Date.
Dates and.
The first three things you put in. The location.
Yep.
What's the next thing?
Date.
What's the last one?
Yes.
The number of guests. Okay, I'm going to tell you why that number is so important. Anything in the first three parts of the algorithm are incredibly important because they decide if you show up in the search results. Everyone who's coming to the Reno market or any other market, there are people that are coming where there's one person in their group, which is very, very few that are looking because those people are just getting hotels. So 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, and there's a number of demand of people coming with those group sizes. If I say I only want up to 4 guests, I have just cut off all of the rest of the market. I do not show up when they search. So the number of guests that you allow into your property will determine the amount of the market you're exposing your property to. But as we all know, if you have a 2-bedroom, you probably don't want to put 12 people in. So there's a balancing act that has to be struck. How many people can you put in the property without it being ridiculous? Now, here's another thing. I had owners that had to go, guys need to know how the algorithm works. This isn't the old way of doing it. They say, well, I want to set my maximum guests at 4. But if they have a baby or a small child, I'll allow for more than that. I'm like, when I go up and I have my group of 5 and I put in my party, I didn't put in 4 and maybe a baby. I put in 5. And then you didn't even show up in the search results. What we found when we did this study was that for some of our properties, for 3 bedrooms specifically, people said, oh, 3 bedrooms. I'm going to put in 6 people, 2 per bedroom, right? Well, guess what? We looked at how many people that booked 3 bedrooms actually had a group of that many. They were losing 50% of the market. By changing it to 8, they accounted for another 35%. They had 85% of the market for people that were actually booking 3 bedrooms. Now we're included. That's a big difference. That's a stupid little mistake that owner didn't realize they were making. And when you expand that, so when you set up a vacation rental, you want to optimize it for as many guests as you can have in beds. Things like bunk beds are great. A lot of times people are traveling with their family. Families like Airbnbs, especially ones of bigger size. Another thing I'm going to point out as far as opportunities go. 4-bedroom. 4 bedrooms are our favorite properties to work with. Why do you guys think? Why would 4-bedroom?
Multi-generational.
Large 2 families.
2 families. When you have 4 bedrooms, it's very likely that you're going to get a 2 different groups contributing to pay for it. Here's the other thing. Less people, when they think of investing in a vacation rental, they think small. They think a condo, they think a 2-bedroom, something like that. But the demand on the other side of it is for the big units. Because if people have a small group, hotels are more a viable option. But if I'm going with 12 people, I'm not going to be staying at the Marriott. I'm going to be looking for an Airbnb. So the demand is higher and the supply is generally lower. So 4-bedroom and bigger tends to be great. We also have found that our best returns come in what we call the premium class, not the luxury class. Luxury class are great. We make a lot of money on it. I love luxury properties, but I will say from a return on investment standpoint, the luxury properties, the properties themselves are just so freaking expensive that even when you're charging, we have a property, that $10 million property, we charge $5,000 a month. And I did the calculations on if that was mortgaged, and we would not make enough to pay the mortgage on that place at a $10 million property, even at $5,000. But then again, I don't think we're not a ton of people out there looking for those kind of properties. And if they are, they generally don't care that much because they just want to pay for the bills of the property. Like the one that we have is owned by a tech billionaire. So, but those premium properties, large properties that are made nice, like that one that I showed you initially, those are the ones that generally do the best. Okay. So talk about wrong minimum stay. Okay, do not go too small with your minimum stay. If you got a group that's coming booking for 1 night, what do you think's the risk? They're usually going to be staying more than they.
They're hookers.
Yeah, they're partying. You get a group of 20-year-olds, you just booked a house for a night. I will tell you what is going to happen at your house. Yeah. That is why I always recommend a minimum of 3. And then you screen your guests carefully. We have the whole process for that we do to ensure that you aren't having people with bad intent using the property. Okay, so minimum stay is important. Also, don't go too high. Higher, busier seasons, higher minimum stay. Because you have the demand, you can make sure that you're picking the guests that you want.
What do you charge for cleaning for like a 4-bedroom house?
Depends on the market. The amount that you pay for cleaners in Tahoe versus for Reno is significantly different.
So what is it for each?
So right now, I actually just did a study on this in our different markets. By per square foot, we're finding in Tahoe about 17 cents a square foot is what we're seeing as far as it goes. In other markets like Hawaii, you're looking more like 20. cents a square foot. In Reno, you're probably closer to like 12 or 13. So it's kind of a square footage game.
And they're not in-house for you, you contract out all.
We contract out cleaning, yeah, and most people do. The reality is this, the skill set it takes to do a really good clean on a property and doing digital marketing are different skill sets, okay? So if you find someone who's gonna do it all, just know they're probably really good at one and not that good at the other. That's generally what we found. So we stay in our lane, we let them stay in theirs, and we split the revenue that we make amongst us and our partners. Okay, we talked about lack of optimization, wrong price, or wrong amenities, wrong pricing. So I've had owners come up and they go, yeah, we're $200 a night. Like, really? You're gonna charge $200 a night during hot August nights and $200 a night during, April 23rd. Like, you do realize that demand varies immensely. You want to have dynamic pricing. Another really smart strategy is to have a strategic discount schedule. We use a system that automates this. Okay, quick note on automated systems. There's a lot of companies out there that sell automated pricing systems, Beyond Pricing and some of these other guys, and they're like, oh man, like, don't even worry about it. Like, we got this algorithm and it's like super magical and it just gives you just the right price. And I'll tell you guys right now, if there was an algorithm that did that, I would be the first freaking customer because it would save like a giant chunk of what my company does. But I'll tell you what, they don't work that good. They work okay. They kind of give you an idea. So what we do is we use the algorithms that they use, but then we actually have a real human being go and look at the competitor properties for that unit and look where you're sizing up amongst it. In the slow season, I try and make us be in the bottom 20% of our competitor group. During high season, because only 20% of the properties are going to get booked. But then in the high season, I want to be in the upper 80% because things are going to fill up and we'll be at the top of that. So we'll maximize our revenue. Okay. So pricing is a game you're always playing. And the other thing is discount for longer stays. We have that built into our algorithm. So it actually, the way our system works is that if someone inquires tomorrow for 3 weeks, they're going to get a significant discount because otherwise my property is going to sit vacant. And now I got someone showing up tomorrow to book the next 3 weeks. Like, woo! Stoked on that. Okay. So
Yeah, you didn't mention, midterm rentals, like.
midterm rentals. So like traveling nurses, things like that, furnished finder. So midterm rentals, we do market to that. But the reality is that your revenue, if you play the short-term game right, will be better than the midterm game. Not to say I won't take that if a property's struggling and having issues. Let's go out and get that, but or in a slower season maybe. But we try and focus on the short-term game because we found that you generally get a better return on the investment.
Cause so that's a way to get around some of the permitting issues.
Yes, but one of the problems we're running into right now is that space is becoming more competitive. There are more properties available because of the permitting issues. Everyone's like, oh, well then we'll switch to be furnished finders. There's only so many traveling nurses. And so eventually it becomes difficult, right? So yeah, that is, but it is a viable thing to look for those. I don't have problems with doing the traveling nursing things and that. And for longer stays, we just have built into our algorithm. If someone inquires for 30 days, they're going to get the 30-day rate, which is going to be different than what it is. And it's basically based on what I predict I would have got if I had left it open for those 30 days.
You clean midway on like those longer stays?
It depends on the owner. We allow the owners to decide that policy if they want to, but or if guests request it. Usually though, they don't. So I'm going to say it's probably not standard. But sometimes we will either if the guests or the owner requests it. For our luxury properties though, we offer full maid service. So if they want every day to have everything cleaned up and beds made, they'll do that. Lack of automation. So you want to automate like with pricing stuff. Some of that pricing automation stuff can be helpful, but again, don't count on an algorithm to do it all for you because you won't make as much. Lack of quality controls. This is the inspection stuff that we already talked about, making sure that the property is being checked on. All right, so what we do at Rental Advisor is we try and help people find opportunities that are out there in the market. We work with wonderful realtors to handle the real estate side of things. So that way they can, because there's two sides of it. There's the real estate investment side, and then there's the running of a vacation rental. And just so you guys all know, running a vacation rental is a lot of work. It's not like a long-term rental where you set it and forget it. Not that it is totally set and forget. I know there's still work, but it's when you're dealing with one checkout a year, that's different than dealing with 5 checkouts a month. Okay, the amount of logistical stuff that goes into it, and that's why the management rates in our industry are higher than the management rates in kind of the traditional long-term space. We help people with an analysis so that way they can have an idea of what the projected property can make. That's one of the big things that we do with people is helping them know that. And then when it comes to management, so if you're looking in the management space, okay, you have different options. So you have self-management, okay, which a lot of people do. And frankly, if you have the time to do it, you can be totally successful with it. My own mother, I actually advised her not to use us. As weird as that may sound, because my mom actually loves to play host. And she had the time. And it was like, she's just one of those people that like, she's like the biggest like grandma in the world. She's like, oh yeah, like becomes best friends with everybody. So it's like, look, like, and she had the time. So I'm like, yeah, do it yourself. Like, I'll coach you, I'll tell you how to do it. Be successful, I'll give you the advice. But at the end of the day, like, you have the time, you can do it. However, our main client are people that don't have that. They are busy with other things and they therefore need someone to run it for them. And we've had people who were like, I want to go do it on my own. And then they came back to us and were like, actually, I don't like being yelled at it, midnight by some guests who pissed off because they can't figure out how to use a simple lockbox. Vacasa, these are the big players. These are big boys. Vacasa, Evolve, a few others. I don't know if any of you guys know about Vacasa stock price, but it has not been good. It lost about 50% of its value in the last year. That's because Vacasa is we call them the Walmart of the vacation rental world. They are cheap, 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 and they are cheap, cheap, cheap. So you will end up with that kind of you're very much going to end up with a solution that is very corporate, that's very call center. The good thing about the Vacasas, and some of them, one obviously cheap, but they also have some pretty good technological systems, owner logins, things like that. And then you have mom and pop managers, okay? Local people. The real advantage to them is that you can talk to them. You know what I mean? Like, you can call them on their cell phone. Like, hey, Bob, what's going on in my property? Okay. And that's a huge selling point for the local managers. Now, for those of you who are involved in the local management space, the way I think to differentiate and to do something with it is to be on top of the technology. Because here's one of the issues that happens. The people that have been doing this since the 70s, old Janice and Bob, they're still doing it the way they did in the 70s. And this, as you guys said, as I've kind of explained to you guys, this is a much more technology-driven space now. And so we, as our kind of thing is to say, look, we're on top of the technology, but you also can reach me on yourself. Okay. And we provide consultations for when people are setting up, marketing agents, all the house care, kind of the whole gambit of services. Allow people to make informed decisions, avoid, the mistakes it might make, less headaches, improve financial performance. Here's the thing though, here are the key takeaways I want you guys to get out of today. First of all, the travel world has changed. Okay. If you have not thought about trying out this space, I think you might be missing an opportunity that's there. Okay. I'm not saying to go and liquidate everything and just go full on into the industry, but if you have the ability to try the game, good game. But it is a game that requires some precision and doing it smart and right to maximize your chance at success. Okay, short term is an option now. If you have a property, what can you do with it? You can live in it, you can sell it, or you can rent it. And if you rent it, you can either rent it to someone for a long period of time or a short period of time. And a lot of people, depending on the property that they have, it may or may not be a real opportunity that's out there. Okay. You can enjoy better revenue. Remember that you're either going to pay up front or you pay it out the back. It's another thing that we always tell people. Be ready to make the time investment. Okay, if you're not ready to make the time investment, then you gotta factor in management into your model. Okay, because it takes it, you have to have dedication to it or it doesn't work. It's too competitive of a space to just be casual about it.
How long does it usually take?
For what?
Oh, to get it up and running on something like that?
So-
To get the reviews and all the stuff where you get it.
I would say I usually tell people the first 3 or 4 months are kind of your ramp up period. You're not gonna see huge numbers off the start. You're gonna be at the bottom. You're gonna be happy when you're getting those bookings because it's more about building momentum and reviews. And then once it gets up and running, you have to be thinking, I always tell people in this space, you don't think monthly, you think annually.
Well, and to your point. Our short-term rentals usually double, if not triple, what you would get in rent.
Mhm.
So those first 3 or 4 months are usually what you would normally get. It's not like you're destitute, right?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is even on the low end, if we went back and looked at those numbers are very comparable, even on the low end. Of what you're getting in the rental world anyway. But the real return comes as you play out over the course of a year. Right? And so it's not, and so I always have to tell our owners, have you guys ever worked with people in the digital marketing space? They always tell you about SEO.
Yeah.
They say SEO takes time. You don't start putting SEO and all of a sudden you're at the top of Google. It's the same thing. This is now a search engine game. That is the primary game that is being played in the vacation rental world. Now, that doesn't mean that, like I said, it doesn't mean you're gonna be destitute. You'll see something happen. But it just recognize, you have to have a little bit of a longer mindset in this space. Also, it's just a sexy industry. I'm sorry. It's just cool when you're like dealing with properties on the beach in Hawaii and stuff like that, right? And then also keep my email.
So isn't it more of a, an asset if you're in sort of, like you said, in a tourist market or something like that, as opposed to just like a traditional 3-bedroom house in a suburban market?
Is what more of an, I don't understand.
Well, you're gonna have more of a premium and you're gonna have more bookings and there's gonna be more demand as opposed to if you just have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a.
He's basically saying location.
Yeah, no, location.
So, yeah, you're
It's
not.
like anything in real estate, location
If
is
there's not gonna drive people there,
Body water, sports.
some sort of tourist area is gonna be. a lot.
and that's, but I would say this. I would say, remember, it's not about the total rental demand, because if you're in a place that has so much rental demand, a lot of times that it's really expensive to get into those. So from an investment, a pure investment, but the benefit is if you're in one of those areas, well, guess what? Now you get to go and stay in your beach house in Hawaii. Like, it's freaking awesome. But from a pure investment standpoint, we're looking at ROI numbers. You're looking for a market that has a medium level of tourism, but a very reasonable real estate price. That's where that's why the South has so many opportunities, is because real estate in the South is fairly affordable. But there are places in the South that have quite a bit of demand. And so some of those are these little sleeper markets that actually have some really great opportunities. So anyway, I'll open up to questions. I don't want to take too much time, maybe another 5-10 minutes. But here, I'll come back to you.
So if I wanted to purchase a premium property in Nashville,
Mhm.
who would be the host that appears in the Airbnb?
If we're running it, then
Yeah.
it would be us.
And do they have like a hipster face that shows up like Luke,
Yes.
the surfing dude?
We have, yes,
yeah.
yes, and that is part of the way that we also optimize the listings, is that we will actually have the face of one of our agents that's working that account, who's interacting with those people. So it feels very personalized.
So your
Right.
company takes over
Whole gamut.
completely hands-off.
Yep, we can make it so you,
Photos too?
what was that?
You guys do the photos too?
We have photo photographers that we work with. And so we have over the year, right now we have 150 that we fully run, but then we have like another 350 that we work with on kind of a wholesale basis, which is sort of a different thing. Where we essentially market for them and try and drive them some bookings in addition to what they have. But my I forgot what I was gonna say. Well, anyway, the South is a very there's a lot of opportunities there. We have, speaking of Nashville premium property, we have a premium property in Nashville, Florida. It's killing it.
And then, yeah, how does that compare to a similar investment? Like, okay, so you could buy a really nice chateau thing, really nice 4-bedroom or more, or you could buy a building that has 4 apartments and have 4 long-term tenants for the same price point.
So as far as that goes, I'm not as familiar with what the ROIs are in that other space. What I can do is I can provide you with, if you find a premium property in Nashville that you're like, hey, this looks cool, you can send it over to me and I'll say, hey, here's what that property would generate based on our numbers. Then you can take those numbers and compare it to what.
Right, run a cash on the one, one
Right.
apple versus one orange
Exactly.
in 2 places or the same place.
Just to expound on that a little bit, our best investment was a triplex. There was a house and a duplex. And we just did a long-term on the duplex and Airbnb the house. And the duplex pays the mortgage on the property with long-term tenants, while one corporate, and the Airbnb is just gold.
Great point. So here's another huge opportunity in this space. Multi-configuration properties. What do I mean by that? Okay, I got a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom that are on the same property, right? Okay, when I create my listings, I'm not creating a 5-bedroom listing. I mean, I am, but I'm also creating a 3-bedroom and also creating a 2-bedroom, which now means it doesn't matter what size your group is, we can accommodate. So you get maximum exposure to the market because I have 3 listings for 2 properties. I have each of them individually and then I have them together as a condo unit. And a lot of people love the company. What was that?
You have to pay for 3 listings.
Yeah, but we cover that. That's part of our fee. So that's what we, or that's.
Well, you don't
we
pay
cover.
for the listing.
Well, we have to, but when the commission is made or whatever,
Oh,
it
right.
gets done. So that's what we pay.
Oh, now I have a new question.
Oh.
What is your fee? And then how do you manage that on the calendar if you can book them separately or all together? Like,
So we have a system that actually accommodates for that, where it has an algorithm in it that says. if
it'll
you
remove
okay,
the listing and then put it back up or.
It blocks off the calendar on the combo listing if either one of them get booked.
Okay.
So we have a way to do that. And then as far as our rate, it ranges depending on anywhere from 15% to 30%, depending on the size of the unit, depending on the market that it's in. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. Most people, I would say, the majority of our clients are about 20%.
And you would do like the consumables and all that, you take care of those things.
That is, so it depends on how much consumables the owner wants to do. But
That's
in
negotiable,
general, the owner actually provides that, because at the end of the day, anything that's in the property is the owner's property.
All right.
So that is something we do. But if an owner wants to provide that and that's an issue, we can drop our percentage to help cover that cost. So we negotiate our rates based on a bunch of different factors.
What about international workers?
We have not aggressively pushed into those markets, but boy, I wish to. And you guys wanted to go to some international stuff, I'll be your friend to help you do it, because I would love, there are great locations and regulations on everything there. So anyway, I think I'm about it on time.
Can we ask the people?
One more question.
As far as setting it up and the design and all to create a good product, we got that for services.
Yes, so one of the things, we're big in the BNI network. We love that because there's a lot of great people. And so in these areas that we're in, we can access realtors, we can access interior designers, and depending on the property though. So if it's a higher end property, we offer, you name it, we basically can do it. For, 1-bedroom condo in downtown Reno, and the interior design services are probably gonna have to provide that.
There's a question online. Joel, do you want to unmute?
You bet you. Thank you, Ginger, for putting this together. As a veteran, I'm allowed 2 homes. And I have to live in both of them for 1 year. I have to live in one myself, and then my dad has to live in the other. And I believe 40% of the homeless in America are possibly not drug addicts or alcoholics. They just hit on hard times. So there's hundreds of billions of dollars of incentives out there to create these environments in the city and in rural areas. Are you working in any of those environments? And do you know of any incentives or any areas where I should attack and take that on myself?
That space I'm honestly not as familiar with. I know that my brother, he also, like, some of those loans that are out there for veterans and things are really, really helpful for people wanting to get into this space, but as far as the details of what you're talking about, I'm not as involved in that, so I don't have much to say.
Thank you very much. Great class.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone else? You know,
As far as downtown Reno goes, I've heard there's a lot of HOAs that ban short-term
Oh,
rentals. Do you know about that?
Thank you for bringing that up. HOAs are not your friend in this industry. Okay?
It's just, it's crazy. No,
Condos, it depends, but condos, unless they already are geared for that and that's what they do there, avoid them. So I'm actually like, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's like a big thing. The big risk actually is not city regulation as nearly as much as it is HOA regulation. HOAs, even if it doesn't say anything right now, they could tomorrow meet as a neighborhood and just be like, all right, well, we're done with this and you can't do it. So I highly recommend avoiding things with an HOA unless it's in a community that already is doing this and there's a lot of it. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.